All right, we're gonna get started now. Welcome to the first workshop. We're gonna be kind of going over the basics today. The first quarter, as I mentioned before, as if you didn't come to the meeting, as you've seen in the presentation, we're gonna be going over design and kind of like simulation and analysis for the first quarter. So today, we're gonna be going over kind of like some basic design principles, and then we're going to start introducing the software, how to navigate around it, and also principles behind like how to use sketches properly. Okay. The main program that we're using is SolidWorks, right? You guys can read it in big words there. Everyone who did pay a deposit and turn in an application will be getting your own copy of the software, so you can install it on your own computer and kind of play around with it on your free time. With that, SolidWorks is a CAD software. So CAD stands for CAD. It stands for Computer Aided Design. Kind of obviously, a computer helps you in designing something, right? So that's how they came up with the name. So CAD is a very big tool these days because in the past, people had to draw things by hand in order to get engineering drawings out. And that caused a lot of problems because if you didn't have the best drawing skills, sometimes someone could interpret a 3D image that you drew the wrong way, and then it can lead to eventually your part coming out not the way you wanted it to. With CAD software that's advanced like this these days, it's a guarantee that you won't make that mistake. Pretty much how you want it is what's shown. So SolidWorks, a CAD program, this is a program that's called, what you do is something called parametric modeling. So parametric modeling, the word parametric, it refers to parameters, right? So kind of what that means is that when you're designing, everything is based on references. So obviously if you imagine this large empty space, right? It's hard to really pinpoint anything in that space without something to refer to, right? You don't really know where you are, what size something is. It all has to be relative to something. So that's kind of the premise behind this. Every sketch you draw, every part you make, every assembly you do, it all refers to something. Either it's like, okay, here's one part, I have another part here. I want to refer this part to this and say that there's zero gap between them, right? So in that sense, that's how the parametric modeling works. So a great thing about parametric modeling is that you can make things very definite. If you want something's 5 inches away from another part, it will be exactly 5 inches, so long as you define it that way. Also, just on a note, if you guys have questions throughout the workshop, just raise your hand. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you guys. And also, our officers will be kind of going around once you kind of get into the software, helping you out with that. Okay, cool. So, if you guys haven't yet, try opening up SolidWorks 2016. There should be a little red box icon on your desktop. That thing right there. The thing that says SW, SolidWorks. Cool. So, yeah, once you open it, let me know.
Yeah, I know. I tried to get
Who hasn't opened SolidWorks yet? Everyone says open? Oh, there's computers loading. Try to see if you could. It's just kind of hard to see over there, so for the time being, try following along, okay? Okay, cool. So, when you open SolidWorks, this is the first screen that you're presented with. I'll be talking a little bit more about designing as everyone kind of loads. So when we're designing things, so principles in designing, so designing in engineering and designing in the art world has two different kind of connotations, right? When you're designing in terms of an art sense, it could be abstract. Shapes don't really need to have a defined number or defined parameter to it, right? But in the engineering sense, that's not really the case. Sure, you could design something really cool looking, something super wacky, like a weird dome thing that has like a spider web meshing kind of design to it. Sure, you can even make that on SolidWorks, but you have to think about it in terms, the things that I design, are they manufacturable, right? Can someone make this? Is it possible to build? A lot of things that people design, sometimes they just simply can't be built, at least in a cost-efficient way in the modern time. with 3D printing coming up as like a rising technology, a lot more abstract shapes are able to be manufactured. But in typical traditional like machining and things like that, they have to be somewhat regular in shape. There's this limited complexity you could have to your design. So in that sense, a big phrase is designing with manufacturing in mind. That's a very key thing, and as you guys kind of progress through your courses and have to design through SolidWorks for your projects and whatnot, you'll realize that, okay, I made it this way, but it might not necessarily be makeable. Let me try to edit that so it can be actually made and assembled. Cool. So the next thing when you're designing is efficiency. When you're using CAD to design something, there's hundreds of ways you can make the same part. If you're trying to make a cylinder like this, I could think of 3 ways off the bat. You can make a circle and then kind of drag it out. You can make a cross-sectional rectangle and then revolve it around some central axis, right? Or even if you really wanted to, you could take a little square and then spiral it up until it makes a solid cylinder. So there's a bunch of ways to do it. Obviously, some are not as effective or fast as others. So you always want to think, okay, this is what I want to make. How do I make it the fastest and with the least amount of steps, right? That's something that comes with practice. As you guys get more kind of into the interface and more familiar with it, you guys will kind of learn, okay, this is the best way to make certain shapes or certain geometries. The next part about some designing principles with CAD is editability. So what that pretty much means, since it's a parametric modeling software, you could change certain things that you made. So if you have this part like this, right? You can kind of roll back in time and say, okay, I want to change this circle into a square, right? So this could eventually be, from here, you could immediately switch into a square extrusion. And things like that really depends on how you go through your steps. If you make your steps really complex and undefined, you're going to find it really hard to make certain edits. Eventually, sometimes you'll notice when you have like large assemblies or really complex parts and you try to edit a step from several steps before, SolidWorks will just crash and just like, I don't know what to do with this part anymore. It starts freaking out. So that's a big part of it. Proper CAD practices, that's something that comes with time. And then we'll be going over that slowly just so you guys can get a better practice of how to define things properly. Cool. All right. So if everyone has this open, we're going to start going into it. So first thing, when you open this screen, you'll notice a small toolbar on the top, and then this thing right here. So this thing right here, it's called the task pane. It'll come in super helpful for you guys. Pretty much it gives you a lot of the basic steps and instructions that you need. If you're ever confused, you can notice that on the task pane, there's new documents, so you can open a new document there. There's online training where SolidWorks uploads certain training materials for you to follow through, make certain basic parts. They also have more defined tutorials where they go through a video step by step with you in order to make certain parts, and a bunch of other stuff. A lot of it's kind of irrelevant for this course. That's something that'll come with more later on throughout the workshops. And then as you kind of work with more material properties or doing assemblies and things like that. As you can see, there's multiple tabs. So the design library tab here is super cool if you don't want to design your own gears, your own belts, your own chains and stuff like that, right? The design library has a whole content of predefined parts for you to use. So if you're using, okay, I need like a 38 teeth spur gear and a 12 teeth spur gear, right? It's a lot of time to go through the sketches to draw out a gear, making sure all your involute circles are correct. If you want to ignore that, you can go to the toolbox and download predefined parts. Along with that, we'll kind of get started into going into the software. So right here, under File, this little arrow at the top, it makes a drop-down menu come out when you hover over File. We're going to click New. Cool. So when you click New, the first thing that'll open up is this little small menu box. It has Part, Assembly, and Drawing. These are the 3 different types of files you could open in SolidWorks. So Part is the most basic kind of file that you can make. It's a single model that you'll be making for a single part. Assemblies we'll be learning later around the 4th workshop, where you can start combining parts together. Drawings we'll be learning in the 5th workshop, where you could start representing your parts and assemblies in a kind of 2D fashion, where someone like a machinist could read off of it and say, okay, these are the dimensions on the part. These are the steps I should take to make this part. So we'll be going all over through that. So click on Part for now. this is where we get started. Cool. So a few more things to notice. As soon as you click part, you notice that a few more options open up. So there's a toolbar on top up there with a bunch of features. You guys might notice that some of your little tabs here might be different from what I have up on the screen. So SolidWorks has multiple tabs depending on what kind of add-ons you have. So you could add an add-on for like simulation software, CAM software, through like multi-axis CAM software, whatnot. Okay.
I know you're yelling, but it doesn't transfer.
Yeah. Okay. So you have that on the toolbar on the top, and then on your left, you have something. You have your little tool pane over there. So this part is super great. The first tab, this little yellow part image that you have. So this is called the feature tree. So what the feature tree shows you is what kind of steps or operations you have taken on a part. So this is great in order to, if you want to roll back to a certain feature at a certain time, say, okay, I want to edit this step first. This is the place you would be looking at all these steps. You guys will notice that the feature tree will start growing and growing as you start doing more operations on your part, and it'll be more noticeable once we start doing all the more getting into actually modeling the parts and whatnot. Cool. Also, next part, the next tab in the tool pane is that you have properties. So properties will be, you'll see more of it in a bit once we start sketching things actually. It defines like the parameters of your sketches or your parts. So you could define length, angle, how it's constrained to another sketch. So if you have two lines, right? If you want them to like connect that one end, you could define that in the properties tab as well. On the next tab, you have your configuration. So this will be more relevant later on when we start doing assemblies and models more. You can have one part file, but have it look multiple ways. You could have it look in different ways. So let's say you had an idea for a part, right? But you had 3 ideas for it. They're all kind of similar, but have a few different features. You could design it so a single part file would retain all 3 configurations, and you can load up the one you want when you're doing your assembly. So that's a super cool feature in SolidWorks. All these other stuff, not as relevant. Appearances are to make things look pretty. We'll get more into that when we start doing some rendering stuff later on throughout the course. But cool, we're gonna start actually sketching stuff. So for now, for the time being, ignore all these other tabs. Start with sketch. So that second tab on the top left, and then you'll see a bunch of menus open up. Cool. So in order to do a sketch, you could click on this button. But if you notice, there's a little arrow down here. When you click on the little arrow, it gives you the options of a sketch or a 3D sketch. So a regular sketch is just a 2D sketch. I'll kind of show you the 3D sketch first because we'll be just like glancing over that. So a 3D sketch is super cool in the sense that if you're trying to design a wireframe of like a car chassis, right? You could do that all in one go. So kind of how that works is that it sets you an origin point in space with X, Y, Z axes, and then you could just start drawing lines everywhere. I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So if I were to click 3D sketch, and I click the line tool, as you can see, right now it's down here on the bottom left. That's our kind of like coordinate system. So the coordinate system shows you in the X, Y, and Z directions, and then this other coordinate system opens up. It's showing you which plane you're currently drawing on. So right now we're drawing on the X, Y plane, as the red indicates. So as you can see, I just started drawing a line, right? Right now this line will remain on that XY plane, and then we'll just click anywhere, and then another coordinate system opens up there, right? It's showing you, okay, where are you gonna go from here now? If you click A, you can start switching your coordinate systems. As you guys notice, the red arrows start to shift around, right? So this is when you start defining, okay, I want to start drawing on a different plane. So you can start going in different directions as you please. So in that sense, kind of, we're just going to draw some random lines for the time being. So kind of in this position, it just looks like a 2D flat image, right? But if I were to rotate this image right now, you would see it has some depth to it, right? It's kind of coming out in random directions in space. So that's kind of what 3D sketching does, but we'll be more focusing on 2D sketching for today. So you can do is, if you made a 3D sketch, just right-click here in the feature tree. You see that it has 3D sketch, right? Right-click on it, and then just, oh, we can just delete it here. Never mind. There's a little X sign up on the top right corner. Just click it, and then it'll cancel out any other changes we made. This card changes and exit. Cool. So we're back to the start. So we're going to open up a 2D sketch. So just on the drop-down menu, just click Sketch. So the first thing that it has you do is selecting a plane. So you can't draw a line without referring to a plane on a 2D sketch, right? The software has no idea what point in space you want to draw that line. So you could make features, you could draw a line, circles on any plane or surface. So even if once you later you have like extruded cylinder, you could draw on top of that extruded cylinder. We'll be kind of getting more into that in the second workshop as well. So right here it kind of shows you right plane, front plane, and top plane, right? So when you're starting to design a part, right, you want to identify, okay, this is what my part's going to look like. Which part is going to be the front, right? Whatever sketch you're starting off on, you want to identify which direction it's on. So if I were to draw something like this, I would start with the top plane and kind of extrude something out. So for the time being, let's select the top plane. So you'll know the top plane is going to be selected when there's an orange kind of like outline around it. So click on that. So as soon as you click on it, the view becomes orthogonal to that plane, so kind of perpendicular, right? So you're kind of seeing top down to the plane. It makes it easy to design, and you know your dimensionings will be absolute and not at some skewed angle. So once you have your plane selected, this section right up there, where you see the lines, the circles, that squiggly line. So this portion right here. So those are your sketch entities. So you can consider each line or that you make as an entity of some sort, an object, right? So we'll be kind of starting off with making some lines here. So if you notice on these entities as well, you'll notice that there's a little drop-down menu. You can make various types of lines, so like a line or a center line or a midpoint line, a circle. Circles can be defined in many ways, where it starts at the center and you define a radius, or you define certain points on a perimeter. Same thing with squares, like boxes. You could define corner to corner, you could define center to corner, or you could define 3 points on a rectangle to define this geometry. So for the time being, we're just going to draw some lines. So if you'll notice that your mouse cursor at the point, when you hover over the center right here, there's a little orange circle that fills in there, right? So that's an indication of kind of like a snap-on. So it's kind of forcing your mouse to go to the absolute 0, 0 point. So you're not like a micron over and shift it off to the side. So this is a great way to verify that certain points will be connected and whatnot. And always a good way to start is starting on your center point of your coordinate system. It guarantees that this is the center of your part, and it will come in more useful when you start analyzing your models actually, and then defining where the center of that model is. Cool, so we're going to click on the center, and then we're just going to make a simple box right now. So click there, just click up. As you guys can see, it kind of like you could make any direction you want, right? But when you guys go straight enough, that kind of the line kind of just snaps straight up, and there's a dotted line to show you that you're going in the vertical direction. So we do that, and then you'll notice the same thing for the horizontal direction. As soon as you go horizontal enough, it'll snap right to there. Cool. So right here, as we connect the boxes, you'll notice that when I hover over close enough to that point, it fills in like this orange circle, right? That means that these will be connected, just like that. Cool. So now we have an enclosed perimeter sketch, right? So from your sketch, what you could do is that, let's see. Cool. So right now we want a perfect square, but this is not quite a square, right? So next part that you notice that these lines are blue, but this one single one is black here. Why do you guys think that this line is black but the other ones come out as blue? Any ideas? In some sense. So it is a closed perimeter. Right now it's a closed loop completely.
Can we do that with the
Yes, so that's exactly what it is. The lines will show up blue if they're not defined. So what that means is that they're not perfectly referenced to anything. So right now, what could happen is that I could freely move this point around and it'll start manipulating the entire shape, right? We set no parameters to it in terms of length and whatnot, so it doesn't know what exactly the size should be. If you were to click on this line, you notice that the Properties tab just pops open automatically, right? So this is where you can start defining some parameters for your line. So down here in the parameters, you have your length option, you have your angle option. So right now it's at a random size of 3.0321 inches at a perfect 90 degree. And then also you can lock in relations here. So let's say, it's already horizontal. But yeah, so when you have these, if your line wasn't perfectly vertical or horizontal, you can click on these relations here on the left pane, and then it will make them in that direction. So if I were to click horizontal, it would crash because we already defined it as a vertical line, but we want it horizontal all of a sudden. The software doesn't know what to do with it. It's like, what do you want me to do? So we're going to Control-Z that. If you guys notice again, you see these little green markers, right? Those are indications of the relationship that entity has. So right now, right here, this little indication is a coincident relation. So it means that this line and this line are meeting at this single point. That indication means that it has a horizontal relation. So that line is perfectly horizontal. That indicator is a vertical relation. You could also fix objects. Let's say you really didn't want to edit that left line over there for some reason. You don't want it to move in any way. You click on this fix button, this anchor, little anchor sign shows up, and you can't do anything with, you can't really move this line side to side. Its length isn't defined yet, so it still shortens and grows if you wanted to drag it along, but we'll lock that in too soon. So for the time being, just try putting that fixed relation on there, just so it doesn't move around. Cool. So this line right here, this skewed line right here, if we wanted to make it perfectly vertical, right, we click on this button right here, vertical. As soon as you click on that, you saw that it kind of snaps forward, right? So that's the easy way to define certain relations if you aren't really wanting to draw your own perfectly vertical lines. So now we have a box here. So you notice that this, when we set the anchor, this line turned from blue into a solid black. That's because we fixed it. We fixed it so the computer knows that, okay, this line isn't supposed to go anywhere. It stays where it's at right now. But in terms of the geometry, the sizing, it can still change. So as you notice, this blue line, still, this line on top is still blue. The computer is saying that it's not fully defined. So if we were to give it a length parameter, it would know what to do with it. So the next important tool on this sketch toolbar is that smart dimension right there, right next to the edit sketch. That smart dimensioning tool will be your best friend. Pretty much it defines all the parameters that you need it to have, whether it's angle, length, or just distance from each other. So we're going to click on this, and then we can define the length of this line now. So when we click it there, so it tells you that it's ignore this for now, make this a dimension driven. The reason for that is because we fixed this left line. It's not letting us extend it any further. So what it means by a driven dimension is that something else is defining its dimension, not the number itself. We're going to cancel that for now. Let's get rid of that fixed geometry. You can click on it and then press delete. Hold on. That's weird. There we go. Yeah, so when you select that relation and then press delete, the relation disappears. So now our box is freed up again to be sized. So we're going to do a smart dimension on the line. as you can see, you can drag it up to wherever it wants to be. It's irrelevant where that dimension is. It's just for you to see as a reference. So we're going to click it. As soon as you click and place a dimension, this little box is going to open up, and it's going to let you define what you want the size of this that line to be. So we're going to say some arbitrary number. Let's go with 10. By default, the software loads into IPS mode, which is it does inches, pounds, and seconds. So it uses imperial kind of units. You could change it down here later if you want it to be metric for some reason. But yeah, we're going to just go in here. Oh. There we go. Type 10 and then press enter. Now the software defines this line as 10 inches long, right? So we can do the same thing for all these other lines as well, but we're going to try something different. Instead of just directly dimensioning this line, we're going to try dimensioning the distance between these two lines here. So you click that once, and right now it's trying to define the length of that line again, right? But when you click the other line as well, it immediately changes to define the relationship between those two lines. So you could also keep it down here in the center. You could drag it off to the side. It's just for reference. So we're going to be doing that. And then we're going to give it another number. Let's say we want a perfect square, so we'll give it another 10 value. So as soon as you do that, you notice that all the lines on your sketch turns black now, right? So at this point, the computer knows that the sketch is fully defined. And what that means is that unless you forcefully change the numbers on your own, the sketch entity will not change in any other matter. So I could drag on a point and try to drag it around like before, but you'll notice that it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's because these numbers are binding to it. And also, you'll notice that this is all black because it is currently fixed to your zero coordinate. If your box was drawn somewhere arbitrarily in space, without referencing to the 0, it would all come out blue because you could still technically drag that box around, and it's not defined to a place in space. Cool. So after you're done with that, you always press this little check to get out of that mode, and then now you have this little square. So sketches are the fundamental building blocks for every model that you're going to be making. Every model, 3D model, has to start off as a sketch, or else the part doesn't know what to do with it. So that's kind of it's really important that you define your parts well. So once you define your part, in terms of I mentioned earlier editability, right? What if you wanted your square to become a rectangle, right? If things were defined properly, you'd be able to make that change easily. Just there, you see the dimension highlights when you hover over it, right? If you were to double click that, you could change the parameter in there on the fly. So let's say I want 20 then. Now you have a rectangle right there. So it makes changes very quickly. And we're going to change that to a 20 as well. So we're upscaling the square to a bigger square. Just for practice purposes. So we're going to try just some other stuff. So right now, we're going to go to the circle tool, the circle entity, right there on the top left. When you click it, you can zoom out, and then just place a circle anywhere you want on the side. As you do it, you'll notice that it has a radius readout, right? It's kind of giving you a quick look at what your radius of this circle is at the current moment where your cursor is. So once we have the circle, we're going to give it a certain, we're going to define it a size. So when you click on the Smart Dimension tool up here, and then click on the circle, it automatically wants you to define a diameter for it, right? So we're going to just click anywhere there, and then we're going to give it its dimension. So let's give it a diameter of 25 inches. So now your circle is defined in sense of its diameter, right? But you notice that the sketch is still blue. It's because it's not really grounded to anything. If I wanted to, I could drag this circle around wherever I want, right? It's because it's not referencing itself to any point in space. But we could change that. So when you start having multiple entities inside a sketch, you want to start giving them relationships to each other, right? It's like, how is this defined to something else? So we're gonna go click on this circle when it's highlighted, hold on to Control, and then select this line right here. So now you see that both of these lines are highlighted, right? And then your property tabs automatically opens up. So in this existing relations box, it would show you any currently existing relationships between this line and this circle. There's currently none. They're not referencing to each other. But let's say we want that circle line tangentially to that line. There's a little add relation button here that says tangent. Just click on that. Boop. You see your circle snaps right to that line, right? So the circle's still blue. It's not fully defined because although it's tangential to the line, you could still move it up and down along that tangent. So it still doesn't know where exactly it has to be and what it's supposed to be doing. So we're going to dimension it a certain distance. So let's say, okay, I want you to be the center of the circle to be halfway up that bottom line, right? So centered along with that box. So we're going to give it a 10 value, and then now you have your circle fully defined relative to your first box that you had.
How'd you define that? How'd you define the reference 10? How'd you select the 2 points, the center of the circle and the other point to reference?
Could you speak up first?
I'm sorry.
That's cool.
How did you select those 2 points to reference?
Yeah. So when you're doing dimensioning, right? Let me go back a few steps then. So you meant defining the circle there? Cool. So yeah. When you click Smart Dimension, right? If you click on the shape itself, you could define its size, right? But when you click 2 parts, so click on the center there. So you see that blue little dot came in, right? It's indicating that it's selected right now. And then you could either select this bottom point here, or you could select this line here. They're both on the same line, reference line that we want, so you could select either one that you want. We're gonna go with the line for the time being, just for better practice. So it highlights orange. When you click on it, it automatically draws a dimension line, right? Cool. So you could drag that out, and then you give it. Cool. So it does that. So next, we're gonna start going into. We're gonna try playing around with all the entities that SolidWorks has to offer us right now. So next, we're gonna try using the rectangle tool. So for the time being, just click on the rectangle itself. It's this, when you hover over it, it's this corner rectangle. So when you select the corner rectangle, you define the rectangle from corner to corner. So you just click one place, and then you can start dragging out your rectangle, right? You see how it grows based on size? So we're just going to place a rectangle arbitrarily in space right now. And as soon as you draw that rectangle, you see that it adds these relations to it, because the computer knows that this is a perfect rectangle, and then it has horizontal relationships for the top and bottom line, and vertical relations for the side lines. And then right here, in your property manager, you see all these different rectangle types, right? There's the same thing menu that drops down from here, from the drop-down menu. We're going to try making a center rectangle. So this rectangle was defined corner to corner, right? This one acts much like how the circle was drawn. It pinpoints the center of the rectangle, and then it brings it outwards like that, equal on all sides, in terms of how you do it. So we're going to draw that there. So one thing that you guys notice immediately off the bat, the difference between these two when we made the rectangles, is that this rectangle has a dashed line that, like a dashed X that goes through, right? Those dashed lines, whenever you see them, those aren't sketch lines. Those are considered construction lines. So what that means is that when you set something as a construction line, the computer registers it as, oh, it's a line, it's an object there solely for reference. It's only for your reference, and it's not going to take it into account when you're trying to extrude the part or manipulate the part. For example, I'll show you this real quick. If I were to put an X through here, you see how the line is solid, right? So we're gonna say, okay, we'll be playing more with this next week, but I'm gonna extrude this out. So when I hover over this, it fills in the entire rectangle, right? That's because it doesn't count those X lines as part of the sketch. So if I were to do that, you would want to extrude out a perfect rectangle. Right? So now you have a block of sorts. But if we were to go back and say, okay, let's try extruding this guy up here. You see how instead of selecting the entire rectangle, it only selects the little quadrants defined by that X? So this solid line picks up as kind of like a boundary. It's like, oh, these are the boundaries. I'm going to, by default, give you the option of only selecting what's inside the boundary line. With the construction lines, it doesn't consider it as a boundary. It's like a ghost line. Cool. So now we have these. We're going to delete these, this X in the center. So one cool thing that SolidWorks has based on a selection tool is that when you hold onto your left mouse and then drag upwards in that upwards left corner, you'll see that your little selection box is green. If you drag it in the bottom right corner, you'll notice that your selection box is blue. What do you guys think the difference between the two is?
Which way the normal face? Is it which way the normal face?
No. Yeah.
Select everything it touches versus select just what it so yeah.
Perfect. Yes. So that's exactly what it does. So if I were to drag this way over this geometry and then select this green box, I let go. You'll notice that these lines are selected, right? So when you have that green box, anything that's within that box immediately becomes selected, even if it's partially in that box.
Thank you so much.
On the other hand, if you drag in the opposite direction, so you have the blue selection box, as soon as I let go, it doesn't select anything, right? You're like, what's the point of that? However, if I stretch this blue box all the way around this part, it selects all these lines. So when you're dragging something to the bottom right to select them, it only becomes selected if it's within that selection boundary, completely within that selection boundary. However, if you're dragging up left, even if it's partially inside the boundary, it'll become selected automatically. So depending on what kind of situation you're in and what kind of entities you want to delete, you'll be using that accordingly. So for the time being, we're going to select up left from around here, just so we can select those two crosses. And then once they're selected, we're going to delete them. So from there, we're going to try to stick part of this rectangle into this circle. So what we're going to do first, we're going to define the size. So let's give that a 25, and then we'll give that just 30 for the time being. Cool. And we want this to, let's say we want this line to be running through the center of the circle, right? Coincident with this point here. So we would add a relationship between the two. So there's several ways you could go about doing that. So as we showed earlier, you could select a relation between the 2 points, like that. So when you have those 2 points selected, right, it's highlighted blue, you have the option of adding a relation of midpoint or coincident. So if you do a midpoint, the center of that line will snap to that center of that circle. If you do a coincident, that line will be merely touching that circle, and you can move it up and down anywhere along that circle. So we're going to try playing around with those two. So let's do midpoint. So when you do midpoint, you see that it snaps right to the center of the circle, right? So if we Control Z and say, hey, okay, we're going to try doing the coincident relation. So when you do coincident relation, you notice that it didn't snap right to the center of the circle. However, that line is collinear with where that point is. So if you were to drag this down, you will notice that it is in fact coincident with the center of that circle, right? So doing relations is one way of defining it. Typically, if you can, resorting to relationships are a lot better choice than defining a dimension between things. Sometimes people could do this too. Okay, I want this side to be dimensioned with the center point. You have a number, right? And then you could give it a value of 0. And then does the same thing as a coincident relationship did. However, the computer doesn't register it as a coincident relation. It's like, okay, it's just a 0 distance apart from each other. That's not necessarily the best practice. It's always better to do resort to a relation as you can. So for now, we're going to go with a midpoint relation between the two. So select both of them. Whoop. Go away. So we're going to do a midpoint. So it snaps right there. And then we're going to zoom in on this part. As you can see, you start to see that it starts to get a little bit cluttered with all your dimensioning, right? That's why it's important that your dimensions are well defined and out of the way of the part. So you know what's going on. So all our sketches are black right now, so they're all fully defined. They know what they're doing there, and they know that they're not supposed to move from that point. But let's say we want to make this sketch entity right here into kind of like, we want to get rid of this line and then this half of the circle. So this box here and that curve becomes a single part, right? So when you have a rectangle, you could theoretically just delete one side like that. But for the sake of practice, we're going to show you the next function, which is super cool. It's called trim entities. It's up there in the top on the toolbar. It has a little scissor. So you kind of start to imagine what it's going to do. So once it's selected, you click anywhere here, and then you start to drag. And as soon as you pass that line, you see that line disappeared, right? So, and that center line disappeared. So pretty much what it did at that point is that the trim tool identified that this line right here is bounded at the ends of that circle. So it has a closed boundary. So pretty much when you have a closed boundary, you can say, okay, I want to trim everything off within these boundaries. And that's what that trim tool is doing. You drag it past as you click on that line, it disappears. Right. Is anyone having trouble using the trim tool so far? Nope. Okay. So we can do the same thing for this half of the circle as well. It's defined at these 2 points that they're contacting. So you could, whoop, and then it disappears. So now you're left with this. But you notice that your box, or used to be box, turned from black into blue. The reason for that is because earlier we defined the dimension of this box, the vertical dimension of this box, on that line that we just got rid of. So when you got rid of that line, the dimension also disappeared. So the circle, the box is now saying, oh, okay, my vertical dimension is gone. I don't know what I'm supposed to be anymore. I don't know what size I'm supposed to be anymore. So you would go about just redefining it. So because we set it to 25 previously, the shape doesn't change when the dimension disappears. It retains the size, but you just have to redefine it. So you're going to define the right side of that square right here, and then you notice that the box turns back into a solid black line. So it's really, really important that whenever you're doing your sketches, before you move on to applying a feature to it, like extruding it, revolving it, that your sketches are fully defined like this. If you have any blue lines and you decide to, you know what, I'm just going to forego it and start actually modifying the sketch, you'll run into a lot of troubles later on. Especially as you start to make certain edits to it, the computer will be like, oh, as soon as you change one thing, something's not defined, it will also move along with it. And then your part can change drastically in ways you don't want it to change. So always remember, whenever you have a sketch, try to fully define it as much as you can. It's a little time consuming sometimes to make sure your sketches are fully, properly defined, but in the long run, it'll return its investment. Doubles and even more. Cool. So yeah, so we got to play around with some of the entities, right? So there's things like splines. So this is kind of cool. We're in the sense that you can start drawing random squiggly lines. You select points that it wants to be on, and then you can start defining its curvature. We're not going to play around with it too much, but it's something cool to show. And then you can start dragging these points. And there's little arrows where you can start defining the length of it, and then the angle it goes at. And this allows you to make complex curvatures, right, in your designs. If you really wanted to, this program allows you to mathematically define this curvature as a series of functions. If you need something to be really precise in its curvature, and you're using a spline tool, that is a possibility for you to do. You can define it as math, but no one likes doing math in their spare time. It's kind of boring. So we're going to get rid of this guy. So in order to get rid of it quickly, we're going to use that tool, right, that selection, because we would have to select the whole thing. But if we were to do that, it becomes all selected. We're just going to get rid of it. Cool. So over here in this portion, we're going to start playing with this portion right here. So right here, these are the sketch tools. We played with trim already. Convert entities is more relevant once you start working with models, so we'll go into that once we start the actually modeling things. Offset entities. So offset entities, it's exactly as it sounds like. It will offset a sketch in either direction that you want, whether it's inwards or outwards. So we're going to try offset entities for now, and then we're going to select that, and that. So we have that full defined circle selected. So when you give it a number to offset it by, it will just offset in that direction by that X amount of number you define it as. So let's say, okay, we want to offset it by 1 inch. As soon as you do it, you see that this other sketch has developed around it, and the spacing from the previous sketch is 1 inch away at all points. You can do that in either direction if you want. So if I were to do offset again, instead of offsetting inwards, over here, you could click this reverse box, and then it'll project the preview of the offset inside your original sketch. Right? Click OK, and then now you have 3 sketches that are offset from the center one right here. So yeah, this is just to kind of play around with it. It serves no real purpose at the moment. Next thing that they do have, I don't know why they put that there, but that's part of a sketch tool. So Sketch Fillet lets you add little rounded corners to sharp corners that you have. So if you were to drop down, select the drop-down menu, it gives you the option of a sketch fillet and a sketch chamfer. So the difference between a fillet and a chamfer is that a fillet is a rounded radius corner, right? You define a certain radius to give it, and then it makes a little curve. A chamfer is more of a straight diagonal kind of look to it. And we'll kind of do one for each corner, play around with it. So for now, let's click fillet. We're going to zoom into this corner right here. So in order to do a fillet, you could select a corner like that, just a little point, or you could select two lines that would end up meeting at that point. So you could select either of those. We're just going to select that point for now, and then we're going to give it a radius of 1 inch. Say that. So you see this yellow line is a preview of what it's going to look like, right? As soon as you click OK, that sharp corner's gone, and then a little corner radius replaces it. So just like any dimensioning, as soon as this comes up, we're able to mess around with it and change it, but we're going to keep it for now. Cool. So now we have a little radius in that top corner over there, and we're going to do a little chamfer on this bottom corner. So come here, drop down menu, sketch chamfer, and then when we select that, you see that it's not a rounded radius, right? It's just a diagonal. So when you're doing a chamfer, you could define it in two ways. So you could do a distance and distance. And that means that it will select distance here to offset by and a distance here to offset by. If you have that equal distance space button clicked, it'll always go at a 45 degree. But if you turn it off, you can start defining your own numbers. Maybe you don't want it at a 45 degree angle. Maybe you want it at something weirder. Whoop, the plan didn't work. There we go. So now it's returning what the values say, right? You have 2 inches offset from here, but you only have a 1 inch offset from there. You could also define it as an angle and a distance. So it says, okay, I want this to be this length, and I want it to be at a certain angle, right? So instead of doing a distance relation, you could do a angle and length relation. So we're going to try this one. We're going to do 45 degrees. We're going to say, okay, we want a 1 inch long chamfer. Boom. And it does that, right? You can see that it returns, okay, this is a 45 degree reference from that vertical line. We're going to change that. So yeah, so when you're doing an angle distance relation, if you were to keep it at 45, if you were to change the length of your chamfer, all it would do is kind of start moving in that direction until it could compensate for that length, right? If we say, okay, we want a 0.5 inch there, you see how it dragged from up there to all the way down here. So this is a ½ inch length, and it's at a 45 degree angle. Yeah, once again, yeah, if you guys are having, if I'm going too fast, or if you guys are having a hard time like listening, hearing my like instructions, let me know so I can repeat them for you guys, okay? Yeah. Cool. So now we have this wonky shape here. So those are some of the tools that are in the sketch tools. A very cool thing, next thing that we're going to touch up on is doing patterns. So let's say you wanted like 100 circles, right? It's really painstaking to go through the sketch and draw 100 circles. It would take you forever. You would get carpal tunnels. A lot of things would go wrong. And you would have to define all your circles relative to each other, right? That takes forever. However, the people who made the software thought better and say, hey, let's put a pattern function in here. So you have two options. So as soon as you click on this drop-down list right here, next to the linear sketch pattern, there, you have the option of having a linear sketch and having a circular sketch. So a linear sketch will create a pattern in the X or Y direction, or however you want to define it. You can even define it as a line and then have it follow that line. A circular sketch, what it does is that you select a center point, and then it will revolve around that center point and then create multiple copies of itself. So we're going to try both and then kind of play around with it. So for the time being, let's click the circle tool, hover over this, don't click on that center point yet. So when you hover over that center, you can start kind of dragging out sidewards. And then when you follow along with that center and then keep dragging it sideways, you'll see this little dotted line starting to form, right? That's telling you that it's still, it's kind of locking into that center point. It's at the same height as that right now. So we're gonna drag that out over here, and then just draw a circle for now. It's not really relevant what size the circle is, because we're gonna make it for construction. So yeah, remember how like when you float above certain points, there's an indication that shows you, oh, it's locking into that point, right? Whenever you hover over a point like that, and then you kind of drag the mouse up or sideways. Let's put this one. So I'll show you here. So when you're trying to draw an entity, right, and then you're trying to reference off of the center right here, right? Of course, you can dimension it. You can add a relation to it to have it snap to it later on. But let's say, okay, I just want it to be immediately off the bat collinear with that point. When you hover over that and then you start to move your mouse sideways from it, you see that little dotted line starting to form, right? It's just telling you that, okay, right now your mouse is still collinear with that point. If I were to just like do that and snap off, that line disappears. But if you drag it along, it's still there. And we're just going to draw a circle. So currently the circle is selected after you drew it. And then right here in your properties manager, under options, there's a little checkbox that says for construction. So as soon as you click the for construction box, you'll notice that your solid blue circle turned into a dotted blue circle, right? Yeah, so now that sketch is not a boundary sketch. The software doesn't refer to as, okay, these are limits to a sketch. It is purely there for reference reasons, and we'll show why we need that there. Cool, so we're gonna try doing a circular pattern. Okay. So as soon as you select the circular pattern tool, the property manager opens up again, and it wants you to define a bunch of parameters. So it's like, oh, what do you want to do with this function? So the reason why we drew this circle was to tell, okay, I'm going to use this circle to rotate all that stuff about that circle. So the first thing you do, you can tell which step you want to do by seeing which line is highlighted. Right now this top line is highlighted, so it's telling you, hey, choose a reference circle to revolve your parts around, your sketches around. So right here, we're going to select the circle, right there. That is not clear there. Whoa, okay. Okay, let's do this first then. Click on Entities to Pattern down here. And then we're going to select, what's up? So up here in the linear sketch pattern, you click on the drop down list, you click circular sketch pattern, and then it opens up this menu. So the circle's not selected right now. Yeah, not yet. So when we did that step, when you have the circle selected, there's an option right here that says for construction. Yeah, if it's checked, it turns into a dashed circle or a dashed line. If it's unchecked, it's a solid line. Ah, okay, never mind. So we're good. Clear selections there. Why is it going about that point below? There we go. So back to here. So with our center point, we're going to click on the center right there, and it refers to it as 0.49. So those are just arbitrary assignments of names that it gives to certain points or any geometry that you have. So we're going to click on the center of that circle for the time being, so it has that in there. Next, we're going to click Entities to Pattern. So right now it highlights red, right? It's saying, oh, okay, I need you to select something for me to actually do a pattern on. We're going to start selecting all these lines here. Let's select all of them. Select this box as well. So it highlights blue when you selected it, right? So currently the other parameters say, okay, I want me to revolve this around 360 degrees based off a circle with those X and Y parameters in that location. When you have that equal spacing box checked, it'll place each of those entities equal distance apart from each other, or at this point, I guess, equal angle apart from each other. And then this parameter right here lets you define how many times do I want to copy and paste it, right? So we have it set to 4. So you notice that it previews, okay, this is where your 4 points are going to be, your 4 copy-pasted sketches are going to be. Let's bump that number up to like 12. And then now it projects 12 instances of that sketch being thrown in there. So yeah, as you can see, under the display instance count, it shows you how much, what angle they are apart by each other from. So let's do that to 12, and then let's click OK. Right, now we have this thing that resembles something not as ugly as what we made earlier, but still kind of ugly. So this comes in super useful when you're trying to design a part and say, hey, I want to have like 12 bolt holes on this little panel here, right? And I want them to be perfectly circularly placed from each other. You would use this tool in order to define them at a certain equal distance from each other and to get the number that you want. Is anyone having trouble doing the circular sketch pattern? Did you get it? No? So from here, we're gonna try doing linear patterns now. So we have this thing. Let's say, okay, now I want a bunch of these in like a grid-like fashion, right? So that's where linear sketch patterns come in. So just click on that there without selecting the drop-down box. So you could define your linear sketch patterns in two directions, so direction 1 and direction 2. So as you can see there, by default it selects x-axis and y-axis. It wants to start patterning things in the x direction and in the y direction. If you really want, you could draw a line, a construction line at any angle, and then select that line to do a pattern across. It would still be linear, right? Because you're following a line, but you could make your own custom lines to do that pattern upon. For simplicity reasons, we're just going to do a pattern in the x direction for now. So x direction, so scroll down here, entities to pattern,
And then you select.
we're just going to select, so everybody select this easier. Not the most fun thing to do. Alright, actually let's play around with this little rectangle that we might have made earlier. SolidWorks 2016 little changed a bit on this. Cool. So in entities to pattern, we're gonna select this box here, right? And then we're gonna start doing a pattern on it. First, we're gonna start with the x direction. Let's say, okay, this first parameter right there, the one that's highlighted, it defines the amount of distance apart from each other that you want this pattern to be. So we're gonna say, okay, I want you to be offsetted, like, for the time being, let's say 30 inches from each other. And then I want about 10 instances of this. Click here. And as you can see, that box duplicated itself 10 times with an increment of, how many did I say? Yeah, with an increment of 30 inches apart from each other. So you can pattern things linearly that way. At the same time, you can pattern things in the y direction. So by default, it's not selected. Right now you can see that its instance is 1, so it only has one copy, the original. If we were to select that and say, okay, I want you to do 20. Well, that's not the y direction.
The spacing, the circle?
Ah, so the length too. So we'll say 30. Bam. So now you have a full grid of these boxes. 10 going this way and 20 going this way. Each of them incremented at 30 inches apart from each other. So cool, let's say this is what you want. And then you click OK. Now you have this monstrous grid of just random rectangles put together. Same thing again, this is super useful tool when you're trying to put in a lot of features that are the same thing. So like, let's say you have a bunch of holes that's trying to make like a grid array. This is the tool to use. You want to use this in order to reference like that. Yes?
How do you modify the patterns?
So, in terms of modifying the pattern, oh god, where'd it go? So, okay, it's freaking out. It's just too many boxes. Cool. So, So when you select that value, there's a value that floats there from the original shape, right? From the original shape that you started doing the patterns on, there are these little numbers. So this shows, okay, I did this 10 times, and then for the y direction, I did this 20 times. So it has those as definitions. If you were to edit that, if it wants to play along, so let's say 10. We change that value to 10, right? The amount of instances that we just made reduces by what you set it to. Nice. So we're just going to Control Z from here because this computer isn't able to handle this many boxes at once apparently. There we go. Cool. So that's the purpose of doing the patterns there. Next thing we're going to talk about is this button right there, display delete relations. So when you click on that, it automatically tries to show you all the relations that there currently are. There we go. So you can see on the property managers that all the relationships in this current sketch are shown to you right now. So based on the one that you select, you see them pop up, right? So if you wanted to modify relations, you can also do that in here. The point of this button is great because let's say you don't want to see your relation little icons. They kind of, after a while, they kind of get cluttered, and then you don't want to see all of them. So you would click that to do that. Adding relations is the same thing as before. It's the same way as you selecting two parts and then defining a relationship between them. So we won't go too much into that. Cool. So one of the last tools on the sketch toolbar that we have is this move entity right there. So this is for just very simple manipulating of the sketches that you have, rotating it, scaling it, moving it around in certain in the Cartesian coordinate. So yeah, so when you click on that drop-down menu, you're given the options: move entities, copy entities, rotate entities, scale entities, and stretch entities. So stretch entities just warps it. We're not going to play with that today. We're going to try just move entity. So let's say, okay, we want to move this point from and to, and then we define a starting point, and then we move that point elsewhere. So the reason why the box is changing shape right now is because we never fully defined that box, right? So the box in itself doesn't know what to do. But that point, it's like, okay, I'm being told to move around from one place to another. So I guess I'll follow that. So that's the move function, fairly simple to understand. The copy function is you can select entities here. It does that from to, and then you can drag it, and then it copies and pastes the entities where you want it to be. Rotating the entities, very same way. When that first parameter is open, you select the entities that you want rotated. You say center of rotation. Let's say, okay, I want this to be the center of my rotation, right? And then you define an angle for it to rotate by. Let's say we want some arbitrary number 40. Now you can see where it was before and where it's going to go. The reason why you still see this ghost line is it wants you to confirm before you actually commit to it, right? It's like, is this what you want? When you say yes, it'll place it there for you. So the last one we're going to play with is scale entities. Same thing. You select it, start about. So this is where your base point is. And say, okay, some random place in space here. And then it'll scale off from that point based by which multiple you have it by. So let's say, okay, multiply by half. We're gonna bring it down by half. So it scales it down, right? With that point that you selected in space to be the center of where you're scaling it from. So okay, we're gonna commit to that. Then let's see if we can remove this. So we're just gonna move that somewhere close to the little flower that we made earlier. So that's kind of it for all the sketch tools that we have. So we're gonna kind of just go into a little bit real quickly about like just manipulating your view and stuff like that, and different planes and whatnot. So once you're done with a sketch, if you're not gonna apply a feature to it by making it into a 3D model, over here on the top right there, you see this little back arrow and this little X. As we did before, when you click the X, it'll discard your changes. It'll ask you first before we do that, but it'll get rid of any changes that you made earlier. If you click on this little blue arrow, it'll exit sketch mode and then it'll conserve all the changes that you made. So let's click that for now. Cool. So you notice that all your sketches turn gray now, right? It's currently telling you, okay, these sketches are not active. They're not actively selected right now. You can't modify these sketches yet, and this is the state that they'll be in. So we're gonna make a quick sketch on another plane now. So as you notice on your feature tree, right, you have all this stuff here. You have your front plane, top plane, right plane defined originally when you started the program. You have your origin defined there, and then now we have sketch 1 in the feature tree, right? So this is your sketch 1. We're gonna make sketch 2. So just click sketch again, and this time you notice that the 3 planes that originally showed up when we started the sketch doesn't show up, right? It's because we already made a sketch. It's like, okay, the software is assuming, okay, you're probably gonna work off the existing sketch. Let's say we don't want to do that. We want to make a we want to draw the sketch on a 90-degree face, right? So how do you go about doing that? It's like, how could you select anything here? It's like, if you click anything on the sketch here, we'll want to make the sketch on the same plane, and we don't want that. So we're gonna exit the sketch, do another sketch. So right here, the feature tree from here moves out to on the screen when you're working on a separate sketch like this. So there's a little arrow there next to the little assembly icon. Click on that so it drops down the feature tree. Whoop. Just like that. So it'll show you all the things in the feature tree currently. So if you wanted to, you could reference the sketch off the first sketch too, right? But it wouldn't do much because we'd be just drawing on the same plane. We could have done that in the same sketch feature at once. We initially made this first sketch on the top plane. So let's say, okay, we want to make it on the right plane this time. While sketch is selected, we're gonna click on this right plane. Cool. So now, it might not have changed anything by the looks of it, but try drawing a line. You don't see your line anywhere. The reason for that is because you're looking at it from this direction right now, so the line is like infinitely thin. You can't really see that line, right? So how do you go about addressing that? So up here, there's this little box that says view orientation. If you click on it, it gives you all these options, so, right? But we're gonna select this little view selector box up here in the top right corner of that box, in the dialog box. As soon as you click that, it opens up this cube. So this is just a virtual cube. If you hold down your middle, like the scroll wheel, you're able to rotate your view around, like that. So as soon as you spin it around, you notice that the coordinate system is open on that face, right? We're gonna select this plane right here as our view orientation. So as soon as you click that, it snaps your view orientation into that plane. Cool. So from here, just play around, start adding some sketches in, whatever you guys want. Try playing around with some of the relations. This is a good time to ask questions from the officers that, from whatever you might have missed earlier. Once you kind of draw some sketches around, take a view at it. Now you can see that you have multiple sketches in 3 dimensions, right? And this is how you start defining 3D objects and whatnot. You can draw them in multiple planes, and we'll kind of go into in the third workshop why you would draw sketches on multiple planes at once, right? What's the purpose of this? It's like, if I were to extrude this sketch on the other plane would just completely disappear. So, yeah, for the time being, just play around with it a little bit, and then raise your hands if you have any questions in the midst of it.